Hello and welcome to Bank of America Stadium here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Tennessee just took down NC State, a top 25 matchup, 51-10, a 50-burger for Tennessee +1. I'm Ren Sylvia, this is Noah Taylor. We are with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network, and we predicted Tennessee to win this game. We predicted them to win by multiple scores, but neither of us predicted them to win this game by 41 points. So what went right for Tennessee today?
Defense. I think this is the kind of game that, on all three levels for Tennessee. It was a game where, Grayson McCall, we talked about him all week, maybe present some challenges for them. We obviously knew how good Tennessee's defensive line, how deep they've been. Obviously, stopping the run has been a big part of their defense the last couple of years. And I think today, 39 yards that they held NC State to rushing. Grayson McCall was never really able to get in the game outside of maybe one or two drives, and then obviously the defense was able to make stands there. This is such a promising game, I think, for Tennessee's defense, especially on a night where Nico looked a little bit more mortal, I think, and you still put up 51 points. And but Will Brooks has the pick six there that changes the game. You have a couple fourth down stops when NC State was in desperation mode. I think 3 sacks in there, 11 tackles for loss. So just all in all, I think Tennessee's got to be really pleased with how this defense played.
We'll talk about Nico in a second, but the defense, I mean, you give up to the Grayson McCall, a quarterback who ended up passing for a good chunk of yardage against Western Carolina last week. And that game looked bad for 3 quarters, but he finished one in that 4th quarter. 104 passing yards today, 15 for 22, an interception, that costly one to Will Brooks. That really turned the game on its head. I mean, you have the ball inside the 20, you're in the red zone, you punch it in, it's a 10-10 game. Instead, all of a sudden, it's that 14-point swing, and Will Brooks takes it to the house. You give credit to Josh Josephs for getting in there and causing that poor throw, and then you give credit to Keenan Peely for a big block down the sideline. But it's Will Brooks finding, I guess not the checkerboards, but the NC State end zone down on the other side, and all of a sudden, instead of maybe a tie game, you're up 14, and then from there it just snowballed. 30 straight points in the favor of Tennessee from there. Defensively, it was 3rd downs, though. I mean, first drive of the game, it's 3rd down. 3 different times you get them on 3rd down, and you can't get off the field. You're playing kind of loose coverage, and they're just getting to the sticks and moving the ball. You finally get them off the field. Okay, you finally get the punt, but you got to do something different on these 3rd downs. Like it killed them. It was like a 6-minute drive. For the rest of the game, I don't think they converted a 3rd down. I mean, so that's kind of what the difference on the defensive end was for me. 3 for 12 for North Carolina State on 3rd downs, and they get 3 in a row to start the game. So that was the difference for me. You're not only getting 3 and out, or you're not only getting those first 2 plays on those 3 and outs, but you're getting off the field as well. And that starts with the defensive line, but I thought the secondary did a pretty good job. I thought the linebackers did a good job, and they handled some unique situations, playing kind of 5 linemen at times, and some different looks. But overall, defense dominates, and that's a big deal. Let's talk offense, though. Start with Nico Imaliava. 2 interceptions. Really, one of them is probably only his fault, but what were your thoughts on his performance?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like, obviously, after that Will Brooks interception, it didn't really feel like there was a moment where NC State was in this game or going to be able to overcome what Tennessee was doing. But there were a couple times there where the defense really set Tennessee up with a very short field. And next thing you know, it's settling for field goals and things like that. Again, it didn't feel like those were going to be costly for Tennessee, not getting in the end zone on those. But it felt like, with this offense, you kind of want to see that there. I think as the game went on, particularly in that 4th quarter, they were just unstoppable. And I think he got better as he went along. Again, obviously the pick that just not a wise throw, I think. Didn't see the guy in the middle of the field. Josh Heupel talked about it in there a minute ago about how even on the throw that Nico did throw the second pick on, he said he's got to have better awareness in the pocket. You kind of expect that from the head coach to say about the leader of the offense. But again, a play where he gets kind of blindsided and just kind of lobs it up there. But outside of that, I mean, if you're Tennessee and this is a B- kind of offensive game, you got to feel really good. You put up 51 points. Of course, one of those was a defensive touchdown. And you got to give credit to the defense for helping set you up a lot of those. But I mean, it's just overall, I think the offense got better as the game went along. And obviously Dylan Sampson had a lot to do with that himself. But overall, a really good performance from Nico. And if this is the worst you're going to get from him, I think he can live with it.
Yeah, I think the cards were stacked against him a little bit in a way. Talked about, Miles Kitzelman talked about how we knew they were going to kind of have that 3 in front, obviously a 3-3 defense. And a lot of the times you still get pressure from one of those linebackers. So you're still getting 4 guys at the quarterback, but for a lot of this game, it was just a 3-man front. And you're dropping 8 guys into coverage. And so Tennessee looked at that on film, and they said, well, let's go 12 personnel and let's run the ball. And what that results in is Dylan Sampson running it for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns on 20 carries. I mean, he has a long of 34, finds the end zone. Nico contributes with a touchdown and 68 yards of his own on 8 carries. And that counts the minus yards for sacks. So really, if you're just looking at the positive yardage gained by Nico, it's even higher than that. Deshaun Bishop's in the mix a little bit. He gets 10 carries for 42 yards, average for 4.2 a pop. So they ran the ball really effectively because of what NC State was giving them. They asked their tight ends, having 2 on the field at a time, to block it, and that's what they were able to do, and that's why you saw in those 12 personnel packages, it was Miles Kitselman and it was Holden Stays, because those are the 2 better blocking tight ends. And so you have them on the field at the same time, and you're getting push, and that leads to these big rushing games. And then maybe you switch back to the 11 personnel like they did at times, and that's when Ethan Davis typically came back onto the field. But at the end of the day, that means that Nico's not going to have a lot of options. And that means that sometimes he is going to drop back and there's just not a lot of separation. And that was something I noticed throughout the game, is there was a couple plays Nico drops back and maybe he has time, but he's looking down the field and there's just not much there. And one of them was a big strike to Miles Kitselman, who gets free for a touchdown that gets called back because Dane Davis is ineligible downfield. But it was those type of plays where, all right, you see Nico in the pocket, you see time, your eyes drift towards the secondary and see what's open, and there's just not a lot of separation. I don't think that's something that will plague Tennessee going forward. I know receiver play was maybe somewhat of a worry last season at times, where it felt like people were maybe helping out the quarterback in situations, but I think that's more of a this game specific scenario. But overall, I think Nico handled it mostly well. I do agree you probably can't let that ball get thrown. You have to kind of feel the pressure, but that is a tough situation for him to be put into, and he owned it too. And when he talked to the media, which I thought was cool, he said, talked about the defense, and he said, hey, I mean, 7 of the points on the board are on me. Like those are my 7 points, so you can't even put that on the defense. So that's always good to see from a young quarterback as well. Maybe a situation where some people would just want to be like, that's not my fault, I got hit as I threw, but he's owning it. Anything else on the offense that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I think that kind of like what you mentioned with the 12 personnel, Heupel was asked about that. And one thing that was kind of interesting in his response to the question was, it was definitely something that they've wanted to do for a long time. And he talked a lot about, and Alec Ablin too, in the offseason and fall camp, about, having as much depth as they had in that tight end room. I think tonight, Heupel kind of lit up when he talked about, these guys having that kind of luxury now to be able to run those kind of packages and things like that, and I think so. I think you're right. I think Tennessee came in with that game plan, and then if there's future games where they see something on film that it could work, now that you've got a blueprint that could be successful. And I think Dylan Sampson, obviously running back there too, is just Tennessee's not missing a step, I guess, in that. Obviously, maybe a little banged up, a little short-handed in this game, even in that running back string.
Cam Seldon.
I don't think they're going to miss a step running the ball. They've done really, really well, and not just Dylan, obviously, but you mentioned Deshaun Bishop too, who's a guy they've raved about. He's had 2 pretty solid games, I think, in that kind of number 2 spot right now. So, I think a really good blueprint for Tennessee tonight running the ball.
Yeah, I think the 12 personnel is interesting because it's like, is that something that they're going to go to a lot more, or is that something that was very game specific? I think it was game specific. Yeah. I think that's something that they saw. Like I said, the NC State dropping back a lot of guys in that 3-man front, and they thought that was something they could exploit. But it does open the door for those packages like you talked, where maybe you're playing Alabama and most of the game you're still in that 11 personnel with 3 receivers on the field. But there's situations where you can go into that 12 personnel, and now you have experience to fall back on, and a lot of experience to fall back, and a lot of film to watch to learn from. So it does kind of open the doors for maybe specific things here and there that you can mix in. But I don't think that'll end up being like the new kind of scheme for Heupel and stuff like that. I think it'll kind of mostly just be chalked up to that this is what they saw. But who's to say you don't see a team similar to that in the future as well that you'd like to go to? The running back position, I do want to touch on that really quickly. I mean, Dylan Sampson was the feature back, and that's something that's been new for a Josh Heupel offense. Even back in 21, when you had Tyon Evans and you had Jabari Small still and guys like that, and Jalen Wright was a freshman, you still saw that rotation. It wasn't necessarily what we saw today with Dylan Sampson, where it's like every drive he's on the field. I mean, last year you had 3 guys you felt really good about, and there was times where it's, okay, we'll start Jalen Wright, we'll go to Dylan Sampson, we'll go to Jabari Small, we'll see who has the hot hand, and we'll write it. well, they are really relying on Dylan Sampson having that hot hand, and he's played really well, like one of the best backs in the country so far through 2 games, and he's kind of probably putting himself on some draft boards with the way he's running as well. But it'll be something to note throughout the season, like, do those miles start to add up? Do those hits start to add up? Or is he going to be able to stay fresh like he looks so far? I just think that'll be something to look at as things go forward. What is his snap count looking like, and how is he kind of maintaining that and just physically surviving that? Cameron Seldon, we'll find out, I'm sure, on Monday exactly what held him out of this game, but we'll have to see. But there feels like a gap, though, right now. It feels like Deshaun or Dylan Sampson's up here, and not that Cam Seldon, Deshaun Bishop, those guys are bad, but it just feels like there's a gap right there, and it feels like probably the coaches think the same thing with how they're handling those snap counts. Special teams, Max Gilbert misses one from, I think, 53, but overall, how'd you feel like he kicked today?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week after that Chattanooga game, and it just seemed like, from everything we were told by the coaches in fall camp, that competition at kicker went deep into fall camp, up until the week before the game, obviously, in the opener. And obviously has a really good debut last week. Tonight, they needed him. It was, the offense stalled out on a couple of drives where the defense kind of gift-wrapped them some really good field position. And, it's better than not coming away with points at all, and Gilbert connected on that. And then, like you said, you had I think it was 5 for 5 on the season until they trot him out there kind of late, in this game, and he kicks from 50+. And, that one obviously maybe he gets a mulligan on, but just a really solid performance from him. And you can kind of see why he's created that separation there in the kicking game. 3 really important field goals in this game that got Tennessee points on after some, gaining some momentum from what the defense did.
Last couple things on special teams before we get out of here. Jackson Ross, once again, just a 1-punt game for him. Unlike Chattanooga, though, where things didn't go well, he had a really nice punt today, 43 yards, pins it inside the 20. I think it's at the 8-yard line. So a nice punt from Jackson Ross. Not being used much. You don't want to have to use your punter much, but still remains a weapon, and kind of that bounce back like we saw last season looks like it's starting to maybe take a little bit of form, because there will be a time where he's called on and needs to flip a field, and so far it looks like he's capable of that. Punt returning, though, I thought Squirrel White did a phenomenal job returning punts, and I mean, D. Williams and Velus Jones Jr. set a very high bar for return men at Tennessee, but Squirrel White I thought looked dynamic. He was making guys miss. You saw the speed that he could get to and kind of get down the field, and he's slippery too. It felt like it was tough for some of those guys to bring him down. So that's another weapon for Tennessee, and we saw it kind of win Tennessee a game against Texas A&M with D. Williams. We've seen those special teams plays be really important. So that's something as well that I think you kind of mark as a positive for Tennessee. Is Squirrel White's looking like a natural returner and a big weapon at the position, and from a distance, similar size, got the number 3 on now. It kind of looks like D. Williams. So that's something that's once again stays elite under Josh Heupel, and now kind of the third guy in that system to do well in that role. That'll do it all from us here, though, today inside Charlotte. Make sure you follow us for content throughout the rest of the season as we follow this Tennessee 2024 season that is off to a 2-0 start next week. Kent State back in Neyland Stadium. Nico Imaliava looking to probably keep a cleaner slate, but continue to build on a really nice start to the season as Tennessee's starting quarterback. Links to everything he needs in the description. Make sure you check out VolReport.com for our written content. Thank you for watching.